If I want you to take away just one thing out of the 3P's of today, it would be prepare. I want to take your hand and take you back to year 2015. I was sent to Guilin, China by my previous company for the integral conversation. It was a conference all about how we can make this world a greener place. I knew that they knew that why they were sending me for that conversation. But till this day, I couldn't really make the real justification from my end. I was just 6 months in that company. But what happened in that conference changed my life forever. There was a presenter from Microsoft. He was presenting on stage, and his presentation skills, mind you, were perfect. He had a beautiful presentation deck, and he was going through it, and you could see the envy of the others who had previously presented and who are waiting to present, that knew that he would be the best presenter. As I knew, when I came back to Sri Lanka, I would have to give a summary of what I learned. I emailed him the very next day. To my surprise, Dave from Microsoft replied within half a minute with a PDF version of the presentation. I was over the moon, but there was a small hiccup. His presentation and the presentation slides were unique to him. In layman's terms, those presentation slides were pretty much locked. I could not use them. Only Dave could use them. So with that, let's move to the 3P's of a powerful presentation. What makes a presentation a powerful one that makes everyone wanting more? Hello, I'm Achinta Jayasekara. You can call me Achinta. These are my credentials, and I work with Oral IT as a key account manager looking into international business. So of course, I would be pitching our products to the world, and presentation skills is something that is of paramount importance for me. And I know it is of importance to you as well. That's why we as Startup Colombo Toastmasters have organized this event for you as well. So the 3P's starts with planning. The first P is planning. When I say planning, what do we plan for? We plan for certain things. We plan for knowing your audience. Why do we need to know our audience? For this presentation, I know I'm going to do this presentation to prospective Toastmasters and Toastmaster members. So I need to make my content revolve around that. I remember I did the same presentation back in Malaysia 2017 for the planning and procurement department. We call it PPC. For them, it was not 3P's of a powerful presentation. I renamed it so that it makes it unique for them. It's made to measure. For them, it was the not the 3P's, it was PPC's of a powerful presentation. So that it is in their head always PPC, their department, and they know what we are going to do in a perfect presentation. Next point is you need to anticipate the questions. This one I learned as a management trainee back in my previous employment. If the director of quality is coming down for our presentations, we prepare for quality related problems. If a production director is coming down, we prepare for production related questions. Just like today, I would anticipate certain questions from this presentation so that I could answer you better. But you have to remember, you have to be prepared to go a bit outside as well. If you're in that zone, expecting only 1, 2, 3, and 4 questions, if someone asks something outside that, you will be stuck. So you need to be prepared for that as well. With that planning part there, I want to move you out of this into our brain. Our brain consists of 2 main parts. I know left part, right part, but in the award-winning book by Daniel Kahneman, he talks about 2 systems, System 1 and System 2. System 1 takes care of certain things. System 2 takes care of certain things. I want you to experiment this. What I want you to do is put on the chat, when I put the next slide, if you know the answer, put it onto the chat as soon as you know. All right, ready? What is the answer? Yes, 4. Everyone knows it. That's your System 1 saying it. Okay, next question. Ready? What's the answer? You got stuck. You needed this equation to be solved by not System 1, but System 2. I know some of the nerds in the room went straight away, boom, 5.52. But not everyone has such an advanced System 1. This is where the difference is. You need more cognitive resources to resolve complex problems. That's where System 2 comes in. We should never create a presentation slide that where we need System 2 to process. We need everything to be processed by System 1. If you use System 2, what will happen is, because it's usually using about 800% more energy to process, what will happen is the brain will go into sleep mode and you will lose your audience forever. So how much do you think your System 1 is being used each and every day? How much do you think System 2 is being used? I know all of us want to say our System 2, the brilliant cognitive resource planning part of our brain, uses 100% of it every day. But unfortunately, 90 to 95% of our daily actions are being taken by System 1. And only 5 to 10% of the actions are being processed through System 2 in our daily routine. Let's quickly look at what is System 1 and what are the unique features. System 1 uses a lot of heuristics and biases to process certain things. Scarcity bias, confirmation bias, all these biases and heuristics, and it processes information very rapidly. And it's very efficient because it's using heuristics and biases. It can process data based on previous engagements as well. And it's very non-conscious. You don't need to make an effort. Just like 2 multiplied by 2, we all knew it's 4 within half a second. And it has a huge capacity. As I said, 90%, 90 to 95% is used by System 1 for our day-to-day actions. So it has a high capacity. On the flip side, what is System 2? It's very analytical. 2.4 multiplied by 2.3. We need to go into a lot of arithmetic and logical. Then it's very controlled and slow, and it uses a lot of cognitive resources. So it's very inefficient. You can't use System 2 too much. If you're working in data analytics, if you're using a lot of, your brain, hard brain, System 2, what will happen? You feel dizzy, you feel tired very easily because you're using a lot of effort and energy. It's very conscious. You can't make it unconsciously. It has to happen with a conscious effort. Then, as it's very inefficient and it's very deliberate, we have to make, like, remember it's very low capacity. That's why it's 5 to 10% of our daily actions. With that, I want you to go into our second P, prepare. Why I told about the system 1 and system 2 is the preparing part is all about putting everything onto a slide with system 1 in mind. Okay, if I want you to take away just one thing out of the 3 P's of today, it would be prepare. Why? Someone might say, I came to learn presentation skills, presenting. But if you prepare it the way that I teach you today, what will happen is, by force, your presenting skills will improve. Right? First point in preparing, one message per slide. If we have 3 messages like I have here for a demo, what will happen is you will be talking about the first point, the audience will go on to the second point. When you come to the second point, the audience will go back to the first point and you will be losing the audience before you know it. So what you need to do is make it simple. Keep one message and put the other messages, complementing messages onto the notes, push that into the notes, keep it on the notes, and keep your slide simple as possible. One message per slide. Now, in presentations, we have something called a redundancy effect as well. This is the second point you have to remember. So I'm going back into another maths problem. So what I want you to do is put the answer on the chat straight away as you get it. 1 plus 1. What do you think the answer is? 2. But in presentations, as I said, we have an effect called the redundancy effect. In the redundancy effect, we say 1 plus 1 equals, 0. If you intend to put text on your slide and you start to read the text, you will have 0 in the audience's mind after the presentation because they can't process both. As I said, the brain is not adapt for that. I'll give you an example for this as well. You're having a conversation with one of your best buddies. For me, let's say Ashok Sivalingam, who was doing the previous presentation. I'm talking with Ashok. We are engaged in a deep conversation. And all of a sudden, I hear Achinta. Someone just said Achinta in the room. Now what am I going to do? Someone said Achinta. I want to look, but having eye contact with him, I'm trying to figure out who said Achinta in the background. And keep on nodding at random points so that, Ashok doesn't feel bad. And after a while, Ashok says, don't you agree? Now, that's your working brain. You can't process that 2 information at the same time. That's why you need to make sure that you stay away from the redundancy effect. I'll go a bit more into this. This paragraph that is put here specifically to show that if a presenter starts reading off the screen, the audience will lose focus and at the end of the presentation will go home with nothing in their heads. What's even worse is that the presenter is sending out a subtle message to the audience that they cannot read. Now, isn't that something? Do you want that to happen to your presentations, your audience to go home with nothing in their heads? So keep it simple. You don't need the paragraphs. Just get rid of it. Choose to have bullets or main points in the slides. So how can you take this and improve your presentations? you can use a picture. Make sure when you put the picture, either it's covering the full one or you have a 50-50 split. An example of this would be this slide. You have a nice picture that a lady is presenting with good body language, and you're going to talk about body language. We say open, appropriate, and functional body language. And I could talk about body language with this slide there. So everyone knows I'm going to talk about the body language that is depicted in the slide itself. So this is a good slide. Follow this. But make sure you come up with a picture that, as we say, speak that 1,000 words. Now I'm going to take you to the 5 things you'll, for the rest of your life, will be focusing on. You've been focusing on all these 5 all your life as well, but you didn't know. From now on, you will know. What I want you to do is put on the chat what you see immediately. What did you see? Put it on the chat immediately. Yes, the circle or the dot, contrasting images, contrasting shapes. Then what are you focusing on now? The X, yes, contrasting shape. What are you focusing on now? The contrasting color. What are you focusing on now? The moving object. What are you focusing on now? The big object. So for the rest of your life, you'll be focusing on big objects, moving objects, contrasting colors, contrasting shapes, and contrasting objects. So these are the 5 things you will be focusing on. So when we are making slides, we need to make sure that we focus on these. I'm very fond of games, so let's play another game. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to throw up some balls onto the screen. What I want you to do is count the number of balls on the screen and put it onto the chat. Ready? Took you some time, but the correct answer came as 9. Okay, we'll do it again. How many on screen now? Took a bit less time, but now 4 instant. What just happened? 9 balls, you had to go to your system 2. 4 balls, boom, system 1. So what is the correct number? The optimal number of bullet points onto a slide? It's 6. Don't have more than 6 points onto a slide, because then what will happen is system 2 takes over, more cognitive resources, and you're going to lose the audience forever and ever. But doesn't this mean that you'll have to have more slides? Well, the number of slides on a presentation was never the problem, but the amount of points and the mess on the slides was always the problem. So don't be afraid to have more slides and keep it clean. Now I'm going to do what we always used to do with a kitten. Control their eyes with a laser pointer. What we used to do, we would run around. So in a presentation as well, we need to make sure that we control the eyes of the audience. Okay, focus on. I don't have to say focus on, but look what's going to happen. Aren't you following exactly where I want you to follow? This is not a magic trick. This is using two effects from PowerPoint itself. Two effects. So this is something that you should do, control the eyes. So if you have probably not 9, 10 points, I'm just putting 10 points here for the effect, for you to understand it. But when you have 6 points, make sure when you move to the second point, just like this, from the first point, when you move to the second point, make sure the first point is a bit lighter. It's not as prominent as the point that you're talking on. Third point comes around, fourth point comes around, fifth point comes around. You always have the audience where you want them to be. Otherwise, they'll be focusing on the first, second, and third points when you're at the fifth point. Right? So use contrast where it's supposed to be used. Use it wisely so that you can control and keep the eyes on the prize that you want. All right? Next, moving on to font size and color. Because we mess this up for some reason. I don't know why PowerPoint templates are built in such a way as well. But what did we focus on? The biggest plus mark on the slide itself. Usually in a PowerPoint template, what do we have as the biggest text? The topic. Why do we have it? I don't know. Because how often do we have to have the topic as the most important point? It's always the text that comes after that we have to focus on. I know some of you might not even spotted the small plus mark on the top right hand corner of the big one. So font sizes does matter. No matter what anyone has told you. I know most of the men have heard this from somewhere. I don't want to say from whom, that size doesn't matter, but to be honest, guys, size does matter. Moving on to the font that we use. We have basically 3 types of fonts that we can use for a presentation or even our web page or magazine. First one is sans serif. Sans means less, without. So serif is the decoration. So without decoration, we have the sans serif fonts that we usually see in most large text areas, just like in the web page content, newspapers, magazines, and all. We know these fonts, usually Arial, Helvetica, all these normal fonts that we can use for large areas of our presentation slides. Then we have the serif type of font. It has a slide decorations. The decoration comes as the foot decoration. We call it the foot decoration. The edges are having a bit of a decoration, but this one becomes a bit less easy to read. Sans serif is very easy to read, but when it comes to serif, it's a bit difficult. It's not hard, but it's a bit difficult. So try to keep it less in small areas, like the headings and the subheadings. Don't put it into the content of all your web pages and stuff. Keep it onto the headings and subheadings. We all know what are the fonts that have the serif model. Then moving on to a font type that I was very attached to when I was very small, Gothic. I used to put it in everywhere I had, but unfortunately it has heavy decoration and it's very messy and it's very hard to read. So keep it only in your headlines if you must use it. If not, just keep it simple with sans serif and serif. When we choose the fonts, we have to be very mindful, because the thing is, not every font can be used anywhere. So there are specific places where each font can be used. So use it wisely. I'm going to go over color, but I'm going to run through color. Why? Because I know there's a lot of people who are very creative, but don't try to be an artist when it comes to color. Don't put the whole color wagon into your presentation unless you are presenting for an art gallery. Keep it simple and try to keep it darker. Why do you want it darker? Now what happened? I made the screen black. Now the eyes would be focusing on myself. Why? Usually not on a Zoom, but if it's a presentation on an outside stage, the screen is big. If the presentation slides are lighter in color, we all usually look to the bigger, lighter colored screen. So you are basically pushed to the side because you usually present from the side as well. Don't negate yourself. So make sure you use a color that is lighter, a darker, not a lighter one, a darker color, so that you are the contrasting object. Then don't use all the colors that you think will work. Make sure you use a color palette. When you use a color palette, it matches you the colors. There are plenty of online color palettes that you can use for this. And make sure you test it. If you don't test it on a new venue, your colors might not pop and your text might not be seen. This one I really like. It's animation. When we have animation, what we do? We usually opt for all the animations that PowerPoint offers us and we try to push everything in. As you just saw in that slide, what happened? Your attention keeps bouncing in, sometimes swirls in. It doesn't work like that. So when it comes to animation, less is more. So those are the points that I want you to focus on when you're creating a presentation. Now let's look at what we can do with the third P, present. When you're presenting, make sure that, as I said earlier, your presentation slides pretty much needs to be locked. And you should be the key that opens that presentation and presents it to the audience. I know some of you are thinking most of the presentations that we have ever seen were slides where everything was on the slide. I know where you're thinking, university slides, campus slides. The lecturer comes and puts everything onto the slide and starts reading. That's why we never learned anything in university. Right? Remember that. Now, what do we need to do before the presentation? Before the big day arrives? You have your presentation ready. You've used all the techniques that I told you. Your presentation is ready. What do you need to do before the big day? First thing obvious, you need to prepare and practice. You need to go over the slides. You need to put it on to presentation mode and go through the slides and see if everything is in order as you want it. Any hiccups, you will struggle along if you go it into the first time when you're presenting itself. Second thing is check the equipment, slides, and venue. Why do you need to check the equipment, the slides, and when you go to the venue, what do you need to check? Whether the equipment, the mics, the presentation, the laptop, you need to check all of those. You need to check the slides if it comes out right in the screen, if the colors are matching. And one thing about checking the venue, I'll give you an example. Former President Premadasa used to go to all his stages beforehand and check whether the podium and the flower wreath on top of it was too high because he was quite short. his personality drops if the flower wreath is over his head. So he used to personally check each and every venue. So should you. He was a president. Next thing, I want to get a bit physical with a warm-up. All right. So everyone in your home, what I want you to do is stand up. You might want to turn on your video, or if you feel uncomfortable, don't turn on your video. We are going to go through a quick warm-up before each and every presentation that personally I do as well. Even though I'm a Toastmaster for 8 years, I really need to warm up before each and every presentation. So you. So the first thing we do is not dance, we wiggle, right? We wiggle for 15 seconds and loosen the whole body so that every joint is ready. Then we go into what we call a belly breathing, not chest breathing what we do in sports. This is belly breathing. So I'll step one step back so that you can see my belly and shoulders as well. Your shoulders should not go up. When you're doing chest breathing, you do like this. But in belly breathing, you don't lift your shoulders. You fill your tummy. Right? Do few of those. Then we go into shush. When you do shush, you fill your belly and you then you do a bit of shush pumps. You open your vocal cords as well as getting your nerves out. Now, you do a few tongue twisters. The favorite tongue twister that I do is I slit a sheet. A sheet I slit. On a slitted sheet, I sit. Getting this right is important when, especially, I'm in front of a camera. But you need to warm up your tongue as well. After this, what I do is I open wide for a few seconds and I put my arms back behind my head and go to this pose, the relaxing pose, and remind myself of a winning moment that I have. Do this for 30 seconds and you will be ready for your presentation. With that, now what we need to do during the presentation. I know when you have lots of slides, the natural tendency is to run through your presentation, but that is counterintuitive. What you need to do is actually take this time and go slow. When you're going slow, you also need to make sure that it's not a one-way street, but a two-way street. Especially if it's a Zoom meeting, you need to have an engaging audience. So how can you engage the audience? Put it onto the chat right now. I know we can have, ask you to raise your hand. We can have an icebreaker. What else can you do? Put it onto the chat. Right. Then you need to make sure that all eyes are on you. You might have seen I made my screen black few times during the presentation. Why did I do that? That is because I want you to focus on me, because I am always the presentation. Right? Then in every PowerPoint presentation slider, we have this button. I never thought we are going into what? A SWOT mission where we have to have laser precision to take out a headshot. Your presentation slide should never be so complex. You need laser precision. So using the laser pointer should not be of any use for you. Keep away from the laser pointer. Then don't try to hide behind the podium. Podium is not a place for you to hide behind. if given the possibility, walk out onto the stage. Make use of the stage. Don't always stick to behind the podium. Then use functional body language and eye contact. When you're on Zoom, it's always important to look at the camera. When you're in a big stage, it's always important to look to each member of the audience. Maybe not each and everyone, but each section of the audience. If you're not comfortable looking into their eyes, look into their forehead. No one will know the difference. And body language, you have to use it for what it's meant to be used, functional body language. I managed to grow the sales. The number of COVID cases came down rapidly. It's a small minority of the people, the majority of the people. So do you see how you can use body language to convey the message? Use it for what it's meant to be used, functional body language. The next thing is you need to have vocal variety throughout your speech. If you don't have vocal variety, what will happen is, people will doze off because you're monotonous. Make sure you have ups and downs, even pauses just like that, so that the audience waits for what's that important information. Their attention goes up and you give it to them. Then the master of presentations. Of course, we all know Steve Jobs. He used to command the stage, use the stage. On Zoom, I have a very small stage, pretty much a 3x3 stage. But if I was given a stage like Steve Jobs, a huge stage, we need to make sure we use it. Divide it into 3 parts. You can use chronological order, past incidents, current incidents, and future incidents. Or maybe the most important points go in the middle of the stage. When you're giving an important point, you come to the middle of the stage. And side stories, you can step to the side. Then going into planting the first impression. I think pretty much all of you have seen a TED presentation or a TEDx presentation. They have a red carpet, a red dot carpet. So that presentation, the presenter would directly walk onto that dot, but not every presentation is a TED talk. You might have the perfect opening line, but if you don't know where you're going to go to, what you would do is like, you would walk onto stage like that, and maybe go here, go there. If that happens, your first impression is ruined. So make sure that you have in your head where you're going to go, whether you're going to go and shake hands with the announcer first, then go onto the stage and go to your spot. Where you're going to go, keep an idea of where you have to go. Then last but not least, confidence. Confidence comes naturally to some, but unfortunately to people like me, I needed help. And that help came in the form of Toastmasters. I'm a confident speaker now, but back in the day, I was not. So Toastmasters helped me to become a confident speaker. Not just me, Toastmasters can help you as well. Startup Colombo Toastmasters would be an ideal place for each and every one of you. I guarantee that. You have always been, and you will be, and you will always will be the presentation. And the PowerPoint slides are just there as your visual aid. With those points, I would like to wrap up today's event, and I would want to quickly say thank you to Slide Carnival for this template. I would like to take any questions at this moment. I know I'm a bit behind schedule, so we can have a 5 to 10 minute Q&A session. Manura? Manura, you're muted.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation, Achinta. And now we can move on to the Q&A session, where the audience members, if you have anything that you want to know, please put it into the chat box. It maybe relates to the presentation Achinta did. It may relates to Toastmasters in general. Okay.
Okay, Manro, we have a question.
Yeah.
Achinta. Is it suitable to use online presentation softwares like Prezi? I personally worked with Prezi. It's a very nice presentation software. A lot of attention goes to it. You can, ace a presentation with it, but it eats up a lot of the bandwidth. If you are doing a Zoom meeting, you really have to look at the bandwidth, not of just about you, but is it going to be giving the same visual effect to each and everyone in the audience? Because if someone is coming through mobile data, I don't need to tell about what we have in terms of mobile data these days, but the speeds are very slow. So if you are on to the 6th point, and the first point is the one that, has been loaded to the audience, then there is a contradicting effect. So if it's something physical, I would say you can even download the Prezi template and do it there. If not, I would stick to either Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint. There are other options as well. I've just said those two because those are very user-friendly. Don't have questions, that means two things. One is a very highly unlikely situation where I gave everything perfectly, that no one has any questions. And two, the obvious one, I gave such a bad presentation, no one knows anything of what I said, that no one even knows what to ask.
I think 2 questions. Yeah, now 3.
Okay, so using stage prop distract the audience more, catch their attention more. Using a prop is important. If you have a good prop that goes with your presentation, by all means use it. If you go back to 2014, where Dhananjay won the World Championship of Public Speaking, the rose was there. That was his prop. So he used it. He didn't use it throughout the speech. He came with it, put it into the bin. Then at the end of the speech, he took it out, and the prop was carried through the presentation, but most of the time it was inside the bin. But if you are having a prop that is moving around like a flag in the wind, of course, as I said, your eyes will always focus on the moving objects. So if it's catching the attention more, then I would say keep it out or lose it. I hope I answered that question. Can you give a tip to keep the PPT within time? I can't actually give a tip on that because I've already gone 8 minutes above time. But if you practice more and more, you can either shorten your presentation, or what you say into each presentation slide can be manipulated to keep to a very strict time schedule. When we use pictures, is it should be localized? I personally work in marketing as well. So when I use pictures for my marketing material, I usually go for localized pictures. I tend not to use foreigners in my marketing material. So local, the better. But if you can't find, you have to make do with what you have. One valid point as well. I did point out that, university lectures have certain ways of doing it. I did not mean any disrespect, but, in terms of, how to do a presentation for a corporate setting is different than what we usually use for university lectures. How can I overcome fear of public speaking? By obviously taking to the stage more and more. Will the meeting get face-to-face in the future? Yes. All right. I think that's all the questions we have.